expert. Most digital media experts are at least half my age and seem to have been born with a smartphone as an appendage. Sometimes I'm going to talk a little bit today about how candidates are using social media during this campaign cycle, and it's sometimes hard to believe how quickly the information landscape is changing. From my own perspective, 10 years ago, on George W. Bush's presidential campaign, it's hard to believe not one of us had a BlackBerry. And truth be told, we thought Al Gore was a little weird when we heard he was using this new device to email notes to Tipper. 4 years later, in the 2004 re-election campaign, I couldn't imagine running a presidential campaign, much less my life, without my indispensable and appropriately nicknamed Crackberry. I was thinking about what I had in common with a room full of bloggers, and I realized that although the mediums we use may be different, that at its heart we are all communicators and writers seeking to share our messages with the widest possible audiences. And with 4,000 bloggers in town, I can guarantee that what happens in Las Vegas will not stay in Las Vegas, this weekend at least. Today's communications are faster and more personal and more readily shared than ever before. My colleague Dallas Lawrence, who's our director of our digital media operations, says we've moved from a 24-hour news cycle to a 1440 news cycle. That's how many minutes are in a day. And I'd add we've moved to a more democratic and personal news cycle, no longer controlled by elite journalists, but potentially by any individual with a cell phone or access to the internet. These dramatic changes in the communications landscape are bringing big changes to the political landscape as well. Campaigns of the past struggled to deliver their messages through the filter of the news media. My job, reporters and editors were the ones who decided what was newsworthy. My job was to try to make my candidate's message somehow fit in and get through that filter and find its way into the nightly news or on the morning newspapers. Today, those of you in this room have replaced the news desk, and you've become the assignments editors of the 21st century, really driving a lot of what is covered on the media. What you tweet is reported on CNN and Fox and talked about on talk radio and analyzed on cable and shared with friends via Facebook, and that's vastly expanded the reach of communications. Last weekend, former First Lady Laura Bush published an article in the Washington Post about the ongoing severe repression of women in Afghanistan, a subject that's very close to my heart. And I realized that 500,000 people could potentially read that story in the Washington Post on Sunday morning, but millions could view it online beginning the night before when it was posted online. Within 2 days, 9,000 people had recommended the article to friends on Facebook. 155 people tweeted about it. President and Mrs. Bush both posted it to their Facebook pages, where more than 4,700 people liked it, and 650 joined the conversation by posting comments. So just a few years ago, that article might have generated a few letters to the editor. Today, thousands of readers were able to engage and participate and extend the reach of the message. And today's political campaigns are embracing this paradigm shift. We analyzed the digital strategies of the top 20 most competitive races this year in Congress, 10 in the House and 10 in the Senate. Not surprisingly, all of the campaigns have websites and almost all have links to all the social media from their homepages. About half of the campaigns maintain a blog. 85% of the candidates are on Twitter, 100% of the Republicans, and 70% of the Democrats. However, some of the younger members of our staff said that in reviewing their tweets, they have a way to go to more effectively engage with people on Twitter. They don't retweet or use @ symbols very effectively. Every one of the 20 campaigns had a Facebook page, and many offer very easy, user-friendly ways to share news and information with family and friends via Facebook. Interestingly, many candidates who won their primary races had more Facebook likes than did their opponents. In Delaware, for example, Christine O'Donnell had nearly 10,000 fans to her opponent's 2,400. In Washington, D.C., Vincent Gray had twice as many likes as the incumbent mayor, Adrian Fenty, who lost the election. So perhaps this is a glimpse of the future. Facebook likes as a snapshot of voter intentions. The campaigns that have embraced platforms that allow sustained dialogue with voters are those using the online space most effectively. At their best, social media and digital communications allow a more personal connection between a candidate and his or her supporters. President Obama's 2008 presidential campaign obviously made social media marketing the norm in mainstream campaigns. The Obama campaign, as you know, used technology to communicate directly with voters. They publicized speeches and events by distributing information to bloggers, uploading content to YouTube, even making major announcements like that of his choice of vice president via text. At that time, it was the single largest mobile marketing event in U.S. history with more than 2.9 million mobile subscribers. Now, Senator McCain during that campaign was not known for his tech savvy, but he's come a long way very quickly. He was recently named the Senate's Twitter genius, leading me to believe if he were running for president today, he'd spend less time eating donuts and talking with reporters on the Straight Talk Express and a lot more time tweeting to his 1.7 million followers. Looking at some of the high-profile races in this election cycle, we see many examples of these new social media tactics. Sean Duffy, who's a Republican running for Congress in Wisconsin, does regular video updates from his car and uploads them to Facebook. He's also got a great video that's one of my favorite of the cycles of a lumberjack rolling on a log in the middle of the water, and it's a professional politician who ends up rolling off and falling into the water. In Texas, my home state, Governor Rick Perry has very effectively used Twitter to establish a personal connection with voters. He regularly tweets from his BlackBerry, including a much-described tweet about eating tacos and beer at an East Texas diner. Cory Booker, the Democratic mayor of Newark, really went above and beyond in customer service, showing up to shovel snow from a driveway in response to a tweet from a woman who said her father was in trouble. In Connecticut, Linda McMahon included a text sign-up code on her campaign signs. And there's a ballot campaign in Washington state called Defeat 1098 that is fighting a proposed state income tax using largely online methods. It may be too early to pronounce a trend, but a California poll found that iPhone users prefer the Democratic candidate, Jerry Brown, while BlackBerry users prefer Republican Meg Whitman. And on today's panel, my Democratic boss uses an iPhone. I use a BlackBerry. I think that probably says something profound. It might even be worth a Saturday Night Live skit. Just a suggestion. Used effectively, social media is obviously a very powerful tool to help candidates engage directly and empower voters with relevant content. When it's authentic and engaging, social media can be a tremendous game-changing asset for a campaign. But with this growing power, as Mark referred, comes growing responsibility, and I want to raise some potential negatives that I've witnessed. I'm concerned that the anonymity that social media can sometimes allow can debase our political conversation, making it coarser and less polite. I saw an article in my hometown newspaper a couple weeks ago talking with someone who regularly comments on all the news sites of the major Texas newspapers, and he does so anonymously, and he says he does that because otherwise his diversity officer would get on his case and not like what he was saying. Well, that means he's saying things online that he wouldn't say at work or in his normal social channels. I'm also concerned that technology can dehumanize, making it easy to forget that the people that we're criticizing or making fun of are fellow human beings. And we've witnessed this most tragically in several recent examples of gay students who took their own lives after being humiliated on the internet. And I'm concerned about accuracy. One of the most common questions that I get when I give speeches is, with so much information out there, how do we know who to believe? And bad information gone viral can take on an aura of truth, and that can greatly damage credibility and even derail entire careers and political campaigns. So I hope that all of us will take these concerns and our responsibilities very seriously. The web has empowered and allowed an entirely new chorus of voices to join the conversation, and that's a really good thing. Rather than a relatively small number of media outlets feeding information to the public, we now have all of you sharing thoughts, breaking news, uncovering stories, sharing insights. So ultimately, the digital revolution has enabled a greater conversation. It's allowed political candidates to take their messages straight to the voters and broken down the walls around a campaign, allowing people to get to know a candidate. You know, when I started off campaigning, I remember once when I was 5 months pregnant handing out leaflets at a park and ride, and there was a lot of door-to-door campaigning. Well, today, the internet allows that computer-to-computer campaigning, allowing